All right, welcome to this video on chord inversions and lots of different ways of representing chord inversions. So chord inversions has all got to do with chords obviously, and we're going to be talking about triads. A triad is normally 1, 3 and 5, like in C major. So let's start there with a C major chord. So we've just taken the first, the third and the fifth note of C major scale and created a C major chord. We should know that at this stage and be very familiar with a C major chord, C, E and G. But you don't always have to play it, if you're playing that on a piano, you don't always have to play it C, E, G. You can swap around the notes. And this is what we call inversions. So if we take the C and put it on top, it'll look like this. E, G, C on top. And then we can do the same again. We can put the E on top as well. G, C, E. These aren't the only ways you can play C major. You can play it very spread out, like an open chord. There's lots of different ways, but we're just going to go with these. I just wanted to state that this isn't the only way you can, the only three ways you can play a C chord. Now these have different names, which is where we come to inversions. So the stock standard 1-3-5 chord C is what we call root position. That's root position. This one here, where the first note goes up the top, is called first inversion. And then when you put the next one on top, that's called second inversion. Okay, so that's chord inversions. Root position, we move the C to the top. We have first inversion, we move the E to the top, second inversion. Now, although I've been saying that, the way we generally describe root position, first inversion and second inversion is by stating what note is on the bottom of the chord. So it's really all about what is the note on the bottom of the chord. Is it the tonic of the chord or the root of the chord? Is it the third or is it the fifth of the chord? Okay, so when you have the tonic at the bottom of the chord, it's root position. When you have the third of the chord, so the E on the bottom, it's called first inversion, and when you have the fifth, it's called second inversion. So I'm just going to put a little 1 in brackets there, a 3 in brackets there to remind us. That's generally how we think of it. And when we come to working out inversion things like that, that's how we'll have to think of it. We'll have to think, okay, what's the note on the bottom? Is this the root note? Is this the third, or is this the fifth? Okay, so that's chord inversions. There's lots of different ways of representing it, but that's in terms of notes on the staff. What we're going to talk about now is how to represent those chords as a Roman numeral, which we'll need to do for the assessment, the harmonic analyses. So they're all, if we're in C major, they're all a C chord. They're all a C major chord. So they're all going to be chord 1. So we can start with that. I will come back to, as long as I remember, what would happen if that wasn't in C major, and it's not complicated at all, but we're just going to, just nice and easy, we're in C major, they're all C chords, so we start with 1. But we need to be able to, there's a system of how we can indicate whether it's in root position, first inversion, or second inversion. And I'm just going to write it down first, and then I'll explain. Root position, we don't need to do anything. It's just chord 1. For first inversion, we put 6-3, and quite often we don't even worry about the 3. So I'm going to put a little cross through the 3, but it is 6-3, and I'll explain that in a tick. But we often just put 6, and for second inversion we have 6-4, and we kind of put it. We don't put it right next to the Roman numeral. You can see I've kind of put it as like subtext. I think that's the official name of that sort of positioning. Cool. Let's explain and work out where these numbers come from. So when it says 164, that's a second inversion. People, musicians, professional musicians would know that. So where do the numbers come from? And it all comes down to intervals. So we don't need to worry about that one. Chord 1, root position, great. Here, if we have a look at the intervals between the notes compared to the bottom note, is where we get these numbers from. So the interval between an E and a C is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is a sixth. We don't need to worry about whether it's major, minor, perfect, or whatever it is, but it's a sixth. And between the E and the G is, guess what? It's a third, which we had there. So that's where the numbers come from. Okay? So it's a 6, 3. When you do your assessment, you don't actually have to know where it comes from. You just have to know the notation for it. But obviously I'm going to explain that. But just so you know, it's not assessed. But that is where it comes from. We have a sixth between the E and the C. And we have a third, an interval of a third between the E and the G. So 6, 3. As I said, we often don't worry about the 3. And same thing here, okay? We can see here between the G and the C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's a sixth. And between the G and the C, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remembering when you count intervals, you always count the bottom note as 1 and you count every line and space. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where those numbers come from, 6, 4, okay? So we have root position, there's a Roman numerals, we have root position, which is just the Roman numeral, nothing done to it. I'm actually, at this point, I'm going to rub out that 3. So for first inversion, when we have the third of the chord on the bottom, you'd think they'd make it a 3, wouldn't you? But that's just not how it works. But when we have the third of the chord on the bottom, it is 1 with a 6 as a subtext. And when it's a second inversion, which means we have the fifth of the chord on the bottom, it's 1, 6, 4. As I said, you know, it would be convenient if we just had 3 and 5 there, but that's just not how it works. I didn't invent the system. For last aspect of this is how do we represent this as an actual, if you were writing a chord chart, okay, you know, C, F, G, you know, actual chords, what would this look like? Once again, like Roman numerals, they're all a C chord, and we'll start with that. C, C, and C, okay? So, like Roman numerals, we don't need to do anything here. This is just a C chord, okay? And the Roman numeral is the same. But here, we're going to use slash notation. And I'm just going to explain slash notation. Actually, sorry, not slash notation, slash chord. Slash notation is something different. My apologies, wrong terminology there. These are slash chords. Let me give an example. I'm going to use a different example. So if we have a chord chart and it says G/B, what does that mean? Basically, very simple, nothing complicated. The first one is the chord that you play, and the bottom one is the bass note. So in a very practical sense, if you were in a band and you were playing this chart and you saw this chord, you would play a G chord, the guitar or the keyboard, you would play a G chord, and the bass player would play a B note. Okay? So that is a slash chord. Chord, bass note, chord, bass note. So to signify a first inversion and second inversion, it's going to be a slash chord. So we can put our slash there for both. And what is the note on the bottom of this chord? What do we think it's going to be? C/what? For those playing at home. It's going to be C/E. Okay? Because we have a C chord, but it has an E on the bottom. And this one is going to be C/G. Okay? So we have a C chord with a G on the bottom. Okay? And that's chord inversions represented 3 different ways. Written on the staff as, you know, actual notes, Roman numeral representation, and then the actual, you know, if you were using a chord chart, the actual chords. Before I finish up, I just want to do a couple little examples because you'll need to do this for of the assessments where you're given a chord and you have to convert it to a Roman numeral. Yeah. So let's start with the random one that I put over here. So what is this? Actually, I've just remembered I need to come back and talk about, actually we might do that now. Remember, we're going to talk about if this is not in the key of C. This here. Let's say we were in the key of G. So if we're in the key of C, we have a key signature of C major. But what if we were actually in the key of G, which has a key signature of F sharp? What would change? Is this the same? You know, that kind of thing. Well, you tell me, what is a C chord in the key of G? A C chord in the key of G is G, A, B, C. I'll do that again. Try that again. G, A, B, C. It's chord 4. All that would change here, and I'm not going to, well, I guess I could do it, but it would be, actually I can throw it in. That would just become chord 4. With a 6. Chord 4, whoops. With a 6/4. Okay, so yeah, that's what would happen if it was a C chord but you weren't in the key of G, and it could be a C chord if you were in the key of F. If you're in the key of F and it's a C chord, it would be chord 5. You would have a different key signature. Key signature of F major is B flat. Cool. All right. I'm glad I remembered that. Let's get back to here. So, because this is what we need to be able to do, is we need to be able to take a chord like this and convert it into a Roman numeral. That's one of the tasks in the assignment. So what we're going to do there, for this, we're just going to pretend we're in G major. That'll be easiest. So if we're in the key of G major, we know it's a G chord, it's going to be a chord 1. But we now need to work out if we need to leave it as a root position chord, put a 6 for a first inversion, or put a 6/4 for a second inversion. Feel free to stop the video here and work it out, or you know, that kind of thing, because I'm about to go through it. Or, you know, let's do it. And the way we do this, there's a process. First thing is to write out what notes are in a G chord. So I know that in a G chord, it is G, B, and D. The first is a G, the third is a B, and the fifth is a D. Okay? That is the notes in a G chord. And all I need to do is go, okay, we have a B on the bottom. So the B is the third. And when you have the third on the bottom, it's a first inversion. So therefore, we need a 6. Okay? So that's going to be a first inversion chord, G/B. G chord with a B in the bass. Here's a question. If we wanted to make that a second inversion chord, and put the 6/4, what would be the bass note? So second inversion, what would the bass note be for 1/6/4 on a G chord? Of course, it's the 5th, and it would be D. There you go. And if we don't have any slash something, it's just going to be chord 1 if you're in the key of G. Okay, let's do a few more and then we'll finish up this video. Let's go F/C. Feel free to stop the video and work it out. So, process, write out what the notes are in an F chord. F-A-C. And if you want, you can put the little 1, 3, and 5 there. So, what do we think? Once again, let's just pretend we're in the key of F, just for simplicity. Actually, no, let's change it up. Let's say we're in the key of C. F in the key of C is chord 4. And it's going to be an inversion. So, and in this particular case, we have the 5th on the bottom, and we know that when we have the 5th on the bottom, that's a second inversion, which requires a 6/4. One thing that I should have probably said earlier, in case anyone's not listening anymore, hopefully you've stuck out to the end of the video. Not all slash chords are inversion type chords. There are others. The ones we're going to come across in our assessment are going to be inversions, but not all of them are. For instance, you might get a very common slash chord, and hopefully you can see that, yep, is C/D. So you'll notice that C/D, there's no D note in a C chord. Okay, so just so you're aware, not every slash chord is going to be an inversion. There are lots of other types of them. Cool. All right, let's do one more example and then we'll finish up. Let's go D slash F sharp. Oh, we have a sharp. So first things first, let's write out what the notes are in a D chord. Now I did this one on purpose because not every chord we have is just going to be natural notes, right? That's why I've chosen this one. Sometimes you're going to have sharps and flats. Yeah. So notes in a D chord are D, F sharp, and A, because D major has a key signature of F sharp and C sharp. So that is 1, 3, and 5. Okay, F sharp is our third. So there it is for if we're in the key of D, that is a 1, 6. That's the first inversion. Here's a question just to finish up. If we made that into a second inversion, what would the note on the bottom be? Okay, second inversion, and second inversion means we have the fifth on the bottom, so it's going to be D slash A. Okay, so that is chord inversions in 3 different ways, I guess, is the way to describe that. Cool, enjoy.